our results were, quite reliable, matched almost exactly with the British results that it wasn't a very good weapon. It didn't work that well, but you can see it. Let's see. But here's the other one, and this is just to kind of get to the sensibility that that all of us kind of got into, and particularly in this country, was when we did kind of a recreation of one of the San Francisco anthrax trials, and we needed like a nice high place to do it from where we could see our targets, and there was this great big tower there at the Leipzig City Hall. And now just imagine, say, if we did this at the Empire State Building. We walked in the City Hall, went to the people in charge of the tower and said, we're going to be doing this performance. We're going to be shooting some bacteria. We need to use your tower. It's going to be a bunch of guys. We're going to have a lot of equipment. I know you're not open on Saturday. Just give us the keys. We'll let ourselves in. And if you could run some power out there, that would be great. And when we're done, we'll let ourselves out and lock up. And they went, okay. Right? It's like, we're the City Hall. We support the arts here. Yeah, so off we went again. And we had like our human guinea pig squad, who are basically our test subjects, who we would swab down. And we had this great marching band that led them, so we could all march together. And we picked the American consulate, which was this really strange site that was covered, it's like barbed wire and fencing and armed guards. And when I first saw it, I was like, what is that? It so does not fit in with Sleepy Leipzig. So it's the American consulate. It's like, okay, I understood immediately. So anyway, we marched around, and these guys were great because they were very old communists, and they still lived in a small town outside Leipzig that, still had Karl Marx Way, and the high school, I kid you not, was Ho Chi Minh High. How would you like to graduate from that? Where do you graduate from? Ho Chi Minh? It'd be awesome. And so these guys, except for the very oldest guy, who they said, it was a baritone player, and they said, he was also a Nazi. And I was like, oh, great. We got the best of both worlds, Stalin and Hitler here. And so I said to the guy, when the Nazis came in, when the Stalinists came in, why didn't they kill you? And he said, well, besides being a musician, my other job is different. And, I've seen regimes come and regimes go, but if you're like me and you drive a tank, you always got a job. So they were very pleased to get in on this with us. And, sure enough, we surrounded the embassy, and and you can kind of see the smoke coming off where we did the launch, and we were using the smoke as tracking device. It's a way you could kind of have this very loose aim. And then, we lined everybody up, swabbed everyone down, and also very cooperative. The Institute of Microbiology helped us to identify our bacteria to see, and as always, it didn't work very well. just another great use of taxpayer money. Anyway, as you can guess, the FBI, to both of these things, had very serious objections to us doing these kind of projects. And on some degree, they saw their chance, and it was a great way for them to make an example that would intimidate, basic demographics they don't really care for: academic, artists, and activists. And they get all three in one, right? They can kind of put the pressure on all communities at once. And certainly that's what they did. And at the time that I was arrested, it was the John Ashcroft days, and we all know Ashcroft had this, to parallel Bush's preemptive war policy, preemptive justice. And the notion being, if someone looks like they're going to do something bad, get them now, right? It's not going to be the old way where we follow them around until they're about to commit the big crime and then we arrest them. We're going to arrest them and throw them in jail on whatever kind of charge we could get. And certainly Michael Battle and my prosecutor, William Hochul, were all about doing that. They and had announced publicly they liked the idea of making examples, and I became one of them.
So, Eugene, I'd be curious to get your thoughts on this case, with your perspective as someone who's practiced some of this art, written about this area, this intersection between art and science and biology in particular. You know, where, for example, does Steve's work fit into what a lot of other people are doing, and you know, sort of art and biology and pop culture in general? We were talking a bit about science fiction.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think a lot of CA's work has this. I think its strongest impact as theater in a way, and what I mean is that it's not only provocational, but it has this knack for revealing contradictions in culture. So one of the things that's interesting about the case and then also the Marching Plague and these projects is that on the one hand, you know, Steve's case very strikingly demonstrates that there is a sort of top-down shutting down happening, this sort of old-style sovereign power, this interdiction. You cannot do this. But then I was thinking, it was like, on the other hand, you know, there is a huge effort that is an opening up that is about public outreach, that's about education. There's a whole life science supply industry. And there's one company that has a really great name. They're called BioRad. I don't think they were skaters when they were younger, but what they do is, but they actually produce kits, and these are targeted for elementary, junior high, high school classrooms where students can extract their own DNA and make jewelry, I think, out of it. You can do forensic DNA fingerprinting, and PCR, and all these things, and they're very sort of bare bones, low budget, intended for classrooms, community centers, you know, public outreach programs, almost as if there is an encouragement that everybody do this kind of thing. And you can also see this a lot of times if a museum might have, say, an exhibit about the Genome Project, you'll often find there'll be a workshop day or something like that where you can go and have your DNA sequenced. So I'm just sort of throwing this out as, you know, on the one hand, we definitely do have this sovereign sort of shutting down, but then we also have this sort of opening up. And it's this very unique moment, I think, where on the one hand, nobody can do this, but on the other hand, there's this almost this encouragement that everybody learn how to do it. And that's a really complex form of power that's operating, you know, and I think that you can see that both on the practical level with art-science collaborations, but you can even see that in popular culture kind of representations as well. So.
And George, you've written about Steve's case, and you've made this interesting point about how the government, in a sense, does its own kind of performance art with biology. Maybe you could talk about that a bit.
Sure. Yeah, Steve, first, thank you for sharing this case. And congratulations again. It's a terrific victory, and there aren't many of them, unfortunately. Yeah, and when I first heard of your case, I did almost immediately, in tune to your performance art, which it is, see that the government does much the same thing. The Department of Homeland Security, for example, has 15 worst-case scenarios that everyone in Homeland Security in all the states are supposed to train in and know that 6 of them are biologicals. So biological really gets their goat immediately. I think that there should be training. I'm not against preparedness. But the most interesting thing from your story, as you just said, besides the performance enhancement that's done, is that the FBI agent who was in charge of bioterrorism, who interrogated you, didn't know anything about PCR, didn't know anything about the basic scientific equipment, didn't know anything about biology, but he was in charge of that. And that's part of a whole government program which is called all hazards preparation. The idea is if you're prepared for one hazard, you're prepared for all hazards. So this guy probably knew something about chemical or nuclear or something about something, but didn't have to know anything about that because the whole assumption, this literally is doctrine from the Department of Homeland Security, the whole assumption is a first responder only has to know about one thing and then he's prepared for everything.